Today we are going to have a conversation on assistive technology with Vidhya and Abhay. Vidhya is a student in Bangalore and Abhay works at Microsoft Research. Abhay and his team have been working on some cool stuff for people with visual impairment. Vidhya is part of the group of students that went over to Microsoft Research and tested the prototypes and working with the team to give them feedback on the prototypes. I'm going to start with Abhay. Abhay, can you please broadly describe what assistive technology is?
So yeah, assistive technology would just be any machine way to aid in the life or in any task by someone that we consider traditionally impaired in some way. Now, obviously, the definition of impairment is kind of loose and can be problematic, but for the most part, it's pretty self-evident to people who feel like they can't do or use the normal tools in society due to some impairment. And I guess the alternative is always human aid. So there's always the opportunity that you can have another human assist in someone who has an impairment. But what we feel is that we want to create a sense of independence, autonomy, self-reliance, and capability from people who don't feel like they are enabled in that way in their day-to-day lives. So that's what we feel like assistive technology is and why we care a lot about it.
Actually, I agree with Abhay's definition that assistive technology is any device, app, or anything that assists uh, any kind of impaired people, disabled people to do their daily tasks and to do any task comfortably. So, actually, I think for me as a user, I believe assistive technology is any device that makes my life easier. Though they call it assistive or not, anything that assists me in making my task easier is assistive technology, according to me.
Abhay, Vidya talked about that there are existing technologies and then there are applications, and you were saying something about that in our last conversation. So, can you also talk about how Microsoft Research kind of has arrived at devising and building and innovating with assistive technologies? Like, where does that start?
Sure. So Microsoft Research, our reasoning behind why we work in assistive technology in a research capacity is very simple, and that is that we have sort of an open mandate to make technology better for everyone around the world. And so one of the crucial aspects of that we consider is making sure that technology is available to needs, a diversity of needs, not just the sort of typical average normal use cases, but also use cases that can extend beyond a traditional interpretation of what computers can do or how computers can aid in everyday life. So our group here at Microsoft Research, it's a pretty small group. We're headquartered in Bangalore, and there's probably around 4 or 5 of us that are really invested in looking at accessibility work at the moment. And we feel that there's a really large burgeoning sort of opportunity afforded by software and cheap hardware and quick turnaround times and the availability to prototype new things, is that we can become much more creative in how we develop these technologies and make them more available to a wider variety of people. It's often been thought that accessibility technology is a sort of a niche in that it's not very monetizable. It's not very available in a commercial capacity because the number of users is so much lower than, say, people that just need a computer for spreadsheets. But we feel that now that sort of conversation is changing, and that the availability of very cheap tools to make technology is making those sort of traditional niches more important to work towards. So I think that's where we come from. We really want to take sort of the opportunities afforded by a lot of these new and available and cheap technologies, and then apply them to the field in ways that really serve a larger degree of people than have traditionally been served.
Abhay, can you tell me about the freed belt, the prototype that you've been working on with your team over the past few months at Microsoft?
We created a device called Freed, which stands for the Feature Reading Accessibility Device. And what Freed does is it doesn't try to necessarily replace eyesight as much as it tries to aid in a visually impaired person's existing kind of methodology of how they interact with the world. and this is something that's very different between blind people and sighted people, is that people with eyesight interact with the world from a distance, but people who are visually impaired interact with the world by being near with proximity. So we wanted to enable that proximity of the person to the object, the person to the surroundings, but make that proximity more valuable. So just enhance their existing way of interacting with the world, which is mostly by touch, mostly haptic. So mostly by using their hands and grasping and accessing the world in that way. And now, obviously, there's audio as well, but I think haptics is a big part of the visually impaired person's life. So we wanted to sort of empower that haptic sense. So what the Freed belt does, and I'll give a quick overview of it. We can dive more into maybe the technology behind it later, but what it does is it's a belt-style computer device that you wear, just like a normal belt, and it has a camera on it. And the camera can detect your hands. It can detect your sort of your range of grasping. And anytime you pick up an object, the belt uses advanced computer vision technology and will voice out what it thinks you're holding. So for objects that are ambiguous, such as a box of something, like a box of cookies, a box of toothpaste, or like a bottle of lotion, these things can often be kind of ambiguous to the touch. And so what the Freed belt does is it tries to disambiguate those situations to the end user.
So, Vidya, what did it feel like when you got a call from Microsoft Research and they told you that they're designing this product? What was your reaction, and how were you feeling about being part of this process?
I kind of didn't know what exactly the product is till I went there and actually saw the product. But I knew about the previous technologies that they were trying to develop related to navigation. So I thought this might be something new. So when I went and saw the technology, I found it very interesting because there are many apps also which do the same thing right now. Like you have tap see, and you have lot of other apps like KNFB reader or something like that. KNFB reader does is, say you just take the phone, point the phone to your book, and then there'll be some print written on it. So it will capture the print and announce what exactly it is. That's the thing what KNFB reader does. Then there are other apps like TapTapSee. What happens is when you just take the phone, when you just take a mobile phone generally and install this TapTapSee, so you have like 100 pictures or something free, 100 pictures free, so you can just point to any object that you think you want to know. So what it does, it takes a photo of that and then tells you what exactly it is. It describes the shape, the color. But one main challenge with such apps is you exactly don't know where to point the camera. Sometimes you might want some other object, but you point to something else, so you won't get it accurate. So someone needs to help you with that. Instead, you can ask a sighted person itself what is it. So that was the difference between that technology and what they were developing, because this one was, you can touch the camera, you just get a sense of some object being there, and you can touch the camera, and you can bring the object close to the camera, so you exactly know where you're pointing to. That's not an issue because you're touching the camera, right? So you know where exactly to point. And it also indicates if your object is not pointing to the camera and it cannot be recognized, so it indicates you by the tone. There'll be some hint that you're not exactly pointing to the camera, so you can easily point to the camera and recognize the objects. That was the difference, so I like the device.
When you were actually kind of going through, with the prototype that they were presenting to you, what were some of the inputs that you gave while you were testing it out?
One thing I remember giving feedback was the voice, because it was a different voice. I wasn't used to that voice, and that can easily be changed, like to make it less robotic. One feedback I remember was that. The other feedback was, um, say for example, I don't know how much of, like, the camera is small and then you point some object, so it may capture only half the image. So I'm not exactly sure how that can help you capture the entire image. So that was one thing that I wasn't clear on, if that would be made more clear. So I think it can be used in wide range of, you know, you can use it for various things. Say for example, you just have something, you got some toothpaste or something, you want to know what exactly is there, or you get some pack or some user manual of something, you want to read that particular thing if it can recognize text. So any new thing that you bring without sighted assistance, if you want to know what exactly it is, I think you can use it there. That might be one use.
Okay, and Abhay, you of course might have interacted with many more of the students and other visually impaired persons while you were getting feedback. So, can you also share like what was the process of, like, where you have a certain idea and you're working something out, and then you get people coming in and actually the users coming in and then giving their feedback, and then sort of this back and forth that happens. So, can you like maybe talk about that?
We had developed this idea fairly quickly, I would say. The idea itself and what led us to really go down the path of, I guess, developing the prototype was maybe 2.5 weeks. So after 2.5 weeks, we wanted to, we weren't done with it, and we wanted to take it to actual visually impaired people and see whether what we were building was really the right direction, whether it was the right kind of thing that they would understand or want or be curious about. So we partnered with Enable India. So Enable India is a training school that gives blind, visually impaired people, amongst other kinds of impaired people, the skills they need to enter the workforce in India. So there's one class that was around 12 to 15 visually impaired students with a slight range of different impairments. So, a couple of the students had very minor eyesight, other ones had some light perception, and then other ones were completely blind, and then other ones were congenitally blind, which means they're blind from birth. And we went to their class, and they were really nice and allowed us to sit in on their class with them, and we got to see how they learn how they learn for various computer skills, which is the focus of the course. And we also had the opportunity to take them one at a time out of the class, and maybe we gave it the initial prototype to 2 or 3 of them. We had interviews with 5 or 6 of them, and we took that information and we again returned to the lab, and we kept on building on this. And then eventually, when we felt like we had something that was really usable, something that they could just pick up and immediately start using, which was really not a trivial thing. I mean, if you imagine this completely new device, it's not a phone, it's not a computer. You don't interact with it using a keyboard or a mouse. You just pick up objects up, and so that whole novelty of that, we really wanted to make that easy. And so what we came up with, is a device that takes around 10 to 15 minutes to really get a user comfortable with it. And we actually did a user study on a different group of students at Enable India, where we gave them this belt device, and then we also gave them TapTapSee, which was the app that Vidhya mentioned, and we tried to compare them. Which one was easier to use? Which one was more intuitive? Which one did make them feel better about the object? Which one gave them more confident readings, more information, all that? And we had a variety of different whatever metrics that we used, and we really came up with some exciting results that we felt like the belt was really performing superior to the mobile phone, which is, in my opinion, a pretty amazing feat, since the mobile phone is such a known device. All these students in that class had used, touchscreen smartphones with assistive features and all that. So giving them a device that they'd already used, and then giving them something that they had no idea what it was and what it meant, comparing those two, that was a lot of work and a lot of back and forth, and there was a lot of debates that we had in our office about how to make this thing really really usable in the end. And of course it's still a prototype right now, so there's so many different factors that we would have to look into before we could even consider turning this into a product. And this is definitely not a product, and Microsoft is not intending to make this a product in the future at the moment. But we just want to see whether this kind of new interaction, new way of getting information is really valuable to those people. So that's probably maybe the 3 or 4 month long process that it took to go from initial idea to where we are now, which is we have several different stages of prototypes.
So, is there a possibility that this prototype could become a product and actually hit the markets?
Essentially, we want to make sure that other people have both the inspiration and the tools and techniques that they need in order to make things like this into products. But we don't actually make products ourselves, and there's definitely no, intention for Microsoft to be turning this into a off-the-shelf kind of developed thing. And that's mainly just because we don't have the resources, I feel like, to do that entire kind of work. We have the resources to generate ideas and come up with sort of breakthroughs, but I think that the act of turning something into a usable product that you can buy is very different from coming up with the breakthroughs and ideas. So I mean that's where I feel like my sort of efforts are best utilized.
So, what are the platforms where this information is disseminated, is available for people who would actually like to use it and apply it to developing actual products that could perhaps hit the market?
The number one platform for any kind of research group or academic group is always publishing. That's sort of the baseline for how information is disseminated. But I think that's really limited because publishing usually only gets read if by anybody, it would be by other academics. So it doesn't exactly reach the people that we want it to. But other platforms that we have used and consider using are, one, we have a very large media arm at Microsoft that can allow us to publicize information that we have, and then there's I guess our conversations with our relationships with other companies. So in certain cases, with what we've done, Microsoft Research has influenced other companies or other groups to actually take it upon themselves to develop this into real products. Now, that's not happening yet with Freed, but we hope to perhaps leverage those relationships to make something out of this indirectly. So I think that's the third major way that we would see our knowledge is being dispersed.
Okay, so technology is also kind of progressing in leaps and bounds. And I was just wondering, in the past, say 3 or 4 years, you might have had since the smartphones sort of come in and there's all these apps and there's assistive technology even hitting a country like India, there's so many users. Can you think of daily examples of things that actually have sort of transformed your life, like something which you felt earlier was kind of impossible for you is now possible, and what that kind of does to you, and why is this lack of dependence or independence so important?
The aim of most visually impaired people would be to reduce dependence on others as much as possible. At least in my circle of friends, everyone tries to do that. They find their own creative ways and then try to reduce dependence. So if technology can help you, obviously you would use it to do that. If there is independence, you can create awareness among the public that you can do this, that, so that the public will also be inspired to make public places accessible, and not only public places, technology is accessible and many other things. And as an individual, important independence is very important for you as well, because you won't like to depend on someone more. Say like for me, before I had this talking watch wherein I would just press a button, it would tell me the time. But now you have mobile phone wherein you use mobile phone just to know the time, so you don't need even a talking watch. And mobile phones and all are kind of devices that can do many things. First, I had one device which separately records content, and then to listen, I had to ask somebody else to find the particular file for me because it wasn't accessible. So now, again, you have voice recorders on the phone itself, you have ebook readers on the phone, and apps have revolutionized the way we carry on many activities. So you want to go around, so you have one app designed for visually impaired to tell you exactly the location and things like that. And for many things, and the screen readers completely have revolutionized the way we interact with the world. Sending mails and all are very easy now. It can be done again on phone. So the way sighted people feel about technology, for us, for visually impaired people, it's even more like we feel more empowered compared to sighted individuals, because without internet maybe someone can spend a day reading magazines or newspaper, a sighted individual, but for a visually impaired person everything happens through technology, because only through internet you would be able to read something through your screen reader, so that you don't have access to print, so obviously you need technology. So I think from past 3 or 4 years smartphones have completely changed my life.
So, when you're talking about this technology, in a country like India where so many people either don't have access to this technology, or even if they have access, they have no know-how of how they can sort of go about using this technology, and especially for you're saying that for a visually impaired person, technology can be the single most factor that sort of can change their life and how they live in, the current world. What do you think is important so that more and more people can access technology? Like how many people are actually sort of aware of these technologies, and what do you think needs to be done to address, this issue so that more and more people can access this technology?
Yeah, first thing is the cost, because one screen reader can cost so much. So everyone doesn't have the potential to buy that, especially in country like India. So what many people have done, they've just gone to find illegal ways of finding crack files, installing such things for because you can't afford so much. So the technology, obviously, they should consider the cost factor. Second thing is not everyone speaks English. So among visually impaired people, in villages and all, now they're trying to get educated. Not everybody has education, and not everyone are equally fortunate. So one more thing is that language factor, as I said, like majority of the technology is in English, so we don't have a proper screen reader to read in our regional language. That still we have to depend on audio from someone else. Someone has to read it out, so you listen. Still many are working, but you can't read Bengali, Hindi at least is bearable, because many people have developed something, especially for Kannada and all, you actually don't have it now. So many people need even regional things. So that is one more limiting factor along with the cost.
Okay, and I think I'll ask you just one last or maybe one more question. So most of assistive technology is for personal use, right? Like you use it on your mobile, or you have a cane, or whatever it might be. It's kind of like because of the lack of a larger accessible public space, you need to kind of have certain technologies that you can reach out, that help you reach out. So, but do you think that public spaces could also utilize assistive technology? Like, do you feel like there are certain kind of changes around you that would make a space more like friendly to you and more accessible and open, and you would feel safer moving around? Not only through a device which you personally own, but through kind of installed devices or technologies around you in the world you live in. How would that be?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that needs a lot of work, because I was doing research, various research on different aspects. So one such project was navigation. So many insights came out from there, from many visually impaired people telling how public transport wasn't accessible. Like you don't know which bus number, where exactly it goes, and in the bus you don't know whether you know where exactly you're going. That happened with lot of transportation as well, like not only buses, even with Ola and Uber you don't know where exactly it's going. And it doesn't mean for us, if there is a technology, it doesn't mean it is usable. First thing, they have to make it accessible. Though there were Ola and Uber apps, so they had to be made accessible in order for you to use. Your screen reader should be able to you know interact with that particular app in order for you to use it. So such things. And maybe you go to a theater, you have to take others help to be seated, and for a lot of things, even you take supermarket. So how do you select something on your own? You have to ask people what exactly is this, where's the entrance. Then when you want to build a thing where exactly you should go. So lot of other things also should be made accessible, I think. In that way everything is inaccessible, we are just adjusting with something that is accessible, that's all. Like if you want to have a holistic experience, complete experience like everyone else, then there should be a lot of research carried on in different areas, I think.
Okay, so basically, I think more than anything, technologies or any kind of policies or anything that's being built should have accessibility from the very beginning. It should be factored in.
Yeah, from the time you think of the technology, accessibility should be there. As Abhay pointed out that there are very less people who use it, so mostly people don't consider, and once everything is done for the sighted or abled users, then the disabled face a problem. Actually there will be some technology that's developed now. For us it can be used only after another 5 years, so that's not good. So by then something else would have come up, some new technology. So right from its start, I think developers have to think of um, making it accessible.
I would like to thank Vidya and Abhay. It's been a wonderful conversation on the freed belt, and how Microsoft Research and Abhay and his team went about designing this product and this prototype actually. And Vidya, thank you so much as well for pitching in and for sharing your own personal experience and even sharing with us the importance of assistive technology and independence, and really sort of giving us your own perspectives on these matters. It's been a great conversation, and I hope everyone who's listening has learned just a little bit more about assistive technology, about the availability of technology, and how it's really empowering and enabling visually impaired and blind persons across the globe.